Very good evening, all of you. Warm welcome to our Jnanavadini session today. Quite interesting going to be that we all know this is one of the latest standard which ISO had released during January 31st, 2023. It's just a question of 2 months and which came into effect from February 8th of this year. 31,700, privacy by design, which is released by ISO, as we all know. I have pleasure in inviting Rajeev Panicker. Rajeev Panicker is not somebody who is new to our FDPPI. We all know him, who comes with extensive industry experience, having worked as an IT manager in a leading bank before joining DNV, certification body we all know, as a lead auditor and trainer. He has been holding progressively senior positions during the last 15 years in the areas of cybersecurity and privacy services. Rajeev has been managing the cybersecurity and privacy assurance business with a large contingent of independent auditors and managing the relationships with leading corporate entities. I'm sure all of us will agree in this call that he would be the right candidate to talk about this topic, and let's all listen to him. Thank you very much, Rajeev, on behalf of FDPPI. Thanks for you coming on board and sharing your experience and knowledge on this. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh, and thanks, Navi sir, for this opportunity. And once again, good evening to everybody here. I think we have around 22 participants, including us here. Good evening to all of you. And so I took this as a privilege because, as Ramesh said, actually I've been working with FDPPI for long, but because of some other internal things or my official things, actually I was not able to be so active in FDPPI, but still I am in touch with Ramesh and Navi sir for wherever there is some requirement or there is some need actually. So when Ramesh contacted a few days back, if Rajeev, whether you can take this 31700, this particular standard about privacy by design. So I immediately, first I was hesitant a little bit, but immediately I agreed actually, okay, definitely, I mean, this is an opportunity where I can present these ideas to everybody here. So I have prepared a small presentation here. So that I will use that thing while we are discussing this privacy by design. So now going ahead, this is a question actually when Ramesh and Navi sir asked actually why I have put 31700 as a series here. So now, right now, they have published two standards. One standard is a so-called requirement standard, and another standard is a use case. We can expect more industry-specific standards in this series and soon. So that is the reason actually I have put this as a series here. So now, going to this standard actually, now the question is, what is ISO 31700 series of standard? Hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, Rajeev, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So right now we have these two standards available for privacy by design. And both the standards, if you see actually, this is privacy by design. We are talking about a product, and especially for a consumer goods and services. There is a clear-cut definition of what this service exactly in the preview of ISO 31700. So right now we have two documents, both the documents published in this year, 2023, few months back. The first standard is 31701, that is talking about the consumer protection. So it is rather than privacy by design, it talks about it is a consumer protection standard. So definitely we can see that the standard is looking from an angle of a consumer. When a consumer uses any product, any service, it can be it can be a hardware product or it can be a software product. So now what an OEM or the suppliers to OEM, what they should consider in order to protect the rights of a consumer. So that's the requirements are clearly defined in this particular standard. That is ISO 31700-1/2023. And now the second standard, we cannot call it as a standard. It is actually a technical report, which talks about the use cases. So don't get confused with other standards like we have 27001, 27701. One part talks about the requirement and another part talks about the implementation guidelines. No, it is not like that. In fact, the second standard talks about how we can apply 31700 standard in some specific industries. So what they have did was they have come out with few organizations like a healthcare company, I mean, or a fitness company, how it can be used, or a smart lock, when you have a smart lock, how this particular standard can be made applicable like that. So they have tried to come out with some use cases so that will give more visibility, more idea to the people who are trying to interpret the first standard 31700. And most importantly, this standard, the applicability, we need to say it. So this established the high-level requirements for privacy by design to protect privacy throughout the life cycle of a consumer product. So I will explain you later actually what is this life cycle of a consumer product. So this includes the data processed by the consumer. So throughout the life cycle of a product, this particular standard is applicable. So what exactly it means is, by privacy by design, we are trying to identify what are the privacy requirements required for the entire life cycle of a product. And in the middle part, it is very, very important. This particular standard does not contain any specific requirements for the privacy assurances and commitments that organization can offer consumers. So it doesn't talk anything about it. Similarly, this standard doesn't talk about any specific methodologies that an organization can adopt to design and implement privacy controls. No, it is not there. Similarly, it also doesn't talk about the technology that can be used to operate such controls. So we can see that, I mean, these requirements are very generic and these are at the high level. And then the privacy by design, what is the applicability of products? So it applies to all products that uses personally identifiable information, whether physical goods or intangible services such as software as a service or a mixture of both. And this is applicable to those staff of or organizations and third parties who are responsible for the concept, design, manufacturing, management, testing, operation, service, maintenance, and disposal of consumer goods and services. So this life cycle is very, very critical. So it is responsible whoever, I mean, manage the concept part of a consumer goods and services, or the design part, or manufacturing, the management, testing, or operation, service, maintenance, or disposal. So this is the life cycle of a particular typical product. And whoever is involved in any of these life cycle processes, for them, this particular standard is applicable. And at the very high level, this is the structure of this particular standard. There are 8 clauses in this standard. I mean, I'm talking about the 31701, that is a part 1. As usual, we have the scope, introduction, and everything is there in clause number 1. Then we have the normative references. Actually, there is no normative references for this particular standard, even though there is a section for it. And then the terms and definition, that is very interesting because they have come out with a lot of terms and definitions which will remove any ambiguity while interpreting this particular standard. For example, they have come out with a clear-cut definition of information security and cyber security. We all know what is information security and what is cyber security, but in this one, and typically the tendency is the people try to confuse between information and cyber security. But in this standard, actually, in the terms and definition, they clearly mention, okay, this is what information security means, and this is what cyber security means. And then we have the requirements. Then clause number 4 talks about general requirements. What are the general requirements applicable for privacy by design? There are around 9 clauses, sub-clauses within that one, general requirements. And again, unlike other standards, for example, if you take a 27701, the clause number 4, the general requirements are there, but those requirements are applicable to everybody. But in this standard, it's not like that. There are many requirements you can exclude based on the applicability of this standard from general requirements. And then we have consumer communication requirements. When we need to communicate to to consumers. For example, we have a product and we are selling, we are sending it to the market, and the consumer have the access rights to modify some parameters in that software or hardware. Assume that actually in that particular situation, what type of communication we need to share with this consumer, so that those requirements are coming under consumer communication requirements. And then the risk management requirements, we have 6 clauses under that one. And then developing, so once we have all these requirements are there, then what is developing, deploying, and operating design controls based on those, either clause 4, 5, or 6, that is there in 7.1 to 7.9. And then end of PII lifecycle requirement, there are 2 clauses here. And this standard is also designed in such a way that for every clause and every subclause here, for example, for general requirements, we have 4.1, that is the first requirement. For each requirement, there is a requirement, then there is an explanation of that particular requirement. That explanation talks about what is the objective of this particular requirement, or what is the purpose of this particular requirement. And then there are some guidance also. So this is the same standard, even though it is called a requirement standard, we can see the requirements as well as the implementation guidelines under the same clause number. So then now the question is, out of guidance, actually there are for each clauses there are 10 to 12 guidance or best practices are given. Do we need to, comply to all these requirements? These are not requirements, these are the best practices. Requirement is something which is on the 4.1 or 4.2. That is what we need. 4.21 or 4.2, 4.31. That is what we need to follow here. And the explanation, it will give you a purpose and objective, and the guidance will tell you what are the best practices we can adopt to have for meeting this particular requirement. So let us just go through these things. So here, before going to the standard also, we have this product lifecycle versus PA lifecycle in privacy by design. So now what is the difference between a product lifecycle and PII lifecycle? Let us see actually what is explained in the standard. So as per the standard, the PII lifecycle means the sequence of events. I'm just reading out what is there in this one, so that will be useful for you. The sequence of events from creation or origination to the eventual disposal. So in between, we have the creation of origination, then we have the collection, the through storage, the use, and transfer to eventual disposal. So it includes our archival, processing, so everything of personally identifiable information. And sometimes this is also very important actually. We always feels that actually, okay, I have this data or PIA within a product. So when the product life cycle ends, my PIA life cycle also ends. No, it is not true. Sometimes the PIA life cycle, it extends beyond the product life cycle. So in some of the products, actually, they have given some examples also. In some of these products, so even if the product doesn't exist, the data will be there, maybe in some other form. For example, product might have ended its life cycle, or the we have disposed that product, but we might have archived that data, archived whatever the content, and that archive maybe within, it is kept it somewhere else. Okay. So that is the reason it says that the PII life cycle that extend beyond the product life cycle here. And then the product life cycle means the life cycles within which each product is conceived, specified, designed, developed, tested, implemented, used, maintained, and eventually retained from the service and disposed of. So typically, any product, the life cycle starts with the inception or ideation and ends with the product destruction or the disposal. So whatever is there in between, so we can call it as a product life cycle here. And what is privacy by design? And this is the definition of privacy by design that is given in the standard. I have just copied those from the terms and conditions from clause 3. It talks about privacy by design are nothing but the design methodologies. These are the design methodologies in which privacy is considered and integrated into the initial design stage, And throughout the complete life cycle of product, processes, or services that involve processing of personally identifiable information, including product retirement and the eventual deletion of any associated PII. So it starts with ideation or conceptual stage. And then at that stage, we are trying to see actually what can be the different design methodologies we need to consider when this product is going through the different life cycle. And at that stage, each stage, we also need to see actually what is the life cycle of each product life cycle stage. We need to see what is the life cycle management of PIA in that particular product life cycle stage. So now coming to the general requirements, let us see actually what are these requirements at the very high level. Okay. So now coming to general requirements, the purpose of this general requirement, this particular clause number 4 is in order to implement and adhere to privacy by design for consumer products. So as we discussed actually, these requirements to be met by those involved or in contributing to designing, selling a product or managing consumer product that processes PII throughout their life cycle. And let us see what are the specific general requirements which is defined here. And most of these requirements will be, you are familiar with. For example, now an organization shall implement how the consumer can exercise their privacy rights. And so this is what we are always talking about actually, how do we protect this privacy? So having a privacy management system, PIMS, or comply to any of those requirements can be one of the methods to demonstrate that they have implemented or they are capable to exercise the consumer privacy rights here. Then the next requirement is the organization shall determine consumer needs relating to processing of their PIIs by products designed and developed for consumers. And then the next requirement talks about the organization shall design consumer configurable privacy settings. Like I mentioned, actually, there are some configurations the consumer can modify it. So we need to design such requirements. We need to identify such requirements, and then we need to design such privacy settings. And then what privacy management measures we need to take into considerations, considering the capabilities of consumers and their potential disabilities. And then the organization shall also assign and maintain roles and responsibilities, including at least one accountable person for the overview of the entire PII and product lifecycle, with the responsibility for ensuring the management of privacy risk and controls for the PII throughout the PII lifecycle. This can be an data protection officer. And the organization also shall designate an accountable person for each function or organization. So the first one is at the overview of the entire PII, that is at the organization level. And second one, it is at the each function or function that contributes to the design or operation of privacy controls or manages the processing of PII by the product. And then whoever have this responsibility or accountability, they need to have, the organization needs to ensure that necessary training is available to help to ensure teams have knowledge, skills, and capabilities to carry out their roles effectively. And the persons with the responsibility or accountability for the design and operation of privacy control shall ensure that the training is available to help ensure teams are adequately knowledgeable in both privacy requirements of the product and organization's privacy policies and procedures. So the first, it looks similar, but the previous one talks about the necessary training, and the last one talks about in which areas those necessary trainings are required. So the training and knowledge are required for those privacy requirements of the product and the organization's privacy policy and procedures. And then, as usual, actually, for any other standard, we have this requirement that organization shall create and maintain documented information to demonstrate that design and operation of privacy controls are effective. So these are the general requirements. Again, these requirements are not mandatory. Depends on the type of the organization, type of the business they have, or type of the PI they need to protect. Some of these requirements can be excluded. So that guidelines, it is given in 31700. part 2. Now, let us see actually what is there in our consumer communication requirements. So the purpose of this consumer communication requirement clause is to facilitate confident and informed decision making by the consumer prior to acquisition or use. So we are telling them actually, okay, this particular product have these things actually. Now it is up to the consumer to take a call whether to purchase this product or not. Or if he purchase it, actually, he will have the best practice guidelines or usage guidelines to tell them actually, okay, this is how the modification should be done. Or if you use this one, these are the risks you will have it. So all these communications, we need to ensure it. So the consumers of product that process PIA also wants to know when incidents or errors in how their PIA is processed put them at risk, and when there are changes in the purposes of their PIA will be processed. Now, we have a lot of examples here actually. We are all sometimes talking about the equipments coming from other countries and other things, whether these particular equipments have something inside internally, whether that will take our, spy on our data or our usage, and it will transfer the data to those countries. So such type of things, such concerns are addressed here in this particular requirement. So let us see actually what are in detail, what are the specific requirements here. So the first requirement is the organization shall inform users about its product's consumer configurable privacy settings. And the organization shall maintain and make available information on the product privacy settings or features to other users so they can configure the product according to their privacy objectives. Then the accountable person shall ensure that consumer-facing responsible party provides privacy notices or documentation so consumers understand how their PIA will be processed throughout the PIA lifecycle. The accountable person shall provide the consumer-facing responsible party both the resources and means of escalation for effectively responding to consumer inquiries and complaints about the processing of their PIA. And the organization shall communicate with consumers through a range of channels, media, and languages in the market for which the product is designed in a way that does not restrict consumers understanding the product, its privacy settings, and how their PIA is processed. And the organization shall create, test, and maintain resilient arrangements for communications with stakeholders after a privacy breach. So here, it is very clear that we cannot just sell a product. When you sell a product, if it have some PIA or if have some capability to process the PIA, definitely we need to meet these requirements. And coming to the risk management requirements, this are almost similar to what we have already. So the purpose of the risk management is to control the privacy risk in which the consumers are exposed in relation to the consumer products in question. So here actually, when I use a consumer product, so now what are the risks as a consumer I can anticipate in this particular product, where all the information can get leaked, or when it connected with some other devices, or what can be the vulnerabilities, or what can be the weaknesses with respect to the data here. So now it is the responsibility of the OEM or the product manufacturer to do the risk assessment to identify which situations this PIA can be leaked from this particular product. Okay, again, it is not at the organization level, it is at the product specific. Now, the organization shall take a structured approach here to privacy risk assessment that demonstrates that privacy risks have been sufficiently taken into account in the design and operation of privacy controls throughout the PIA lifecycle. And the organization shall take into account the privacy risk management capabilities of those third parties that process PIA, design, or operate privacy controls. This is a very critical requirement here because it talks about your supply chain. Wherever you have a supply chain, for example, you have an hardware and the embedded software part of that particular hardware is outsourced to somebody else, say an organization X. And now when you do the risk assessment for this particular product, you have to involve your supplier also here. So first of all, you have to assess the supplier, whether he is capable, he or the organization is capable to deliver the services or deliver the product as per your requirements, whether they are following privacy by design. That is the first thing. That means they have to comply to these requirements of this particular standard. Second, now as an organization who have outsourced these services to somebody else, now you have to do the privacy risk assessment in collaboration with your supplier. It is not an isolated like what we are doing it for the process where the organization just try to see actually what is there with the supplier and then we do the risk assessment. No, it is not like that. It is a joint exercise is what standard expect here for that particular product. And then the organization shall establish and document the privacy requirements that will determine the design and operation of privacy controls throughout the PA lifecycle. So this is another critical requirement, because whatever the privacy requirements which we have identified here, that we need to implement it in the subsequent clause. And then following product release to the market, the organization shall monitor the privacy risk associated with the product in use. So once we move the product into production, actually we cannot stop. Okay, our responsibility is over. Now it is up to the the consumers. They have to say no. We have to monitor the privacy risk associated with the product in use, and then wherever required, we need to update this design and the operation of privacy controls, because our meeting the privacy requirements are very critical. So in order to meet those requirements, we need to monitor it, and then wherever required, we have to update the design and the operation of privacy controls here. And the organization shall consider the risk to the PIA in its information security policies and procedures. So this is an organizational requirement, not specific to the product. So there we need to see actually whether in our information security policies and procedures, is there any risk to PIA. So that is also something which we need to identify it. Now coming to the next requirements of development, deploy and operate design privacy controls requirements. So the purpose here is we have identified what are the privacy requirements or privacy controls we have as part of our risk assessment for that particular product. Again, I'm repeating this privacy risk for that particular product. Now we know what are the privacy controls or requirements for that product. Now we need to ensure that these controls are designed, developed, deployed, managed, and operated over a product's life cycle to ensure that they achieve the intended privacy objectives within the product. And these controls do not degrade or operate the unintended ways. So we need to identify the privacy requirements for each stage, the life cycle stage, and then we need to design it, develop, deploy, and manage and operate it. That's a typical requirement. And then the sub requirement is organization shall integrate the design and operation of the privacy controls of the consumer product into the product development and management life cycle. So this typically we are all familiar with. That's what we are doing it in most of the cases when it comes to an product design. Then the organization shall design the privacy controls to meet the requirements that results from a privacy risk assessment. The organization shall engineer, develop, test, validate, and implement the privacy controls to meet the privacy requirements and monitor their effectiveness throughout the PA life cycle. So it is not just develop, we need to do the testing, we need to do the validation, and then based on these things, we need to implement the privacy controls also. Then we need to undertake control test and set control acceptance criteria that demonstrated the intended operational effectiveness of the privacy controls throughout the PA life cycle. For example, the load testing and other things. When you perform a load testing in case of a software, we need to ensure that the PA is not getting compromised over there for that particular product. I'm just giving an example. And then organization shall ensure that a product transition to new or modified or retired privacy controls continue to meet the privacy requirement. So one of our previous requirement is that even when we move this product into the market, we need to monitor it. So when we monitor it, sometimes there is a situation that it may not meet the privacy requirement, or that privacy control or requirement may not meet the privacy objective. In this case, we may need to modify that privacy control, or some days we may need to come out with a new privacy control. So, or some days we need to remove some of the existing controls from the product. So in all such situations, we need to ensure that whatever we do, it is to meet these privacy requirements for that particular product. And then the organization shall ensure that services and controls affecting privacy are operated effectively and efficiently, including fulfilling consumer requests, resolving service failures, fixing problems, and carrying out operational tasks. Then organization shall, with the relevant third parties, design, implement, and operate controls that prevent, detect, and recover from incidents, resume normal operations resulting from operational disruptions and privacy breaches, and enable communication with stakeholders. Similarly, the organization shall, with the relevant third parties, design and operate privacy controls in those services that support the product in a way that consistently meet the privacy requirements. So here, this is a standard which gives a lot of importance to the third parties, and the third parties is nothing but the supply chain here. So typically they have identified two ecosystems for any privacy requirement. The ecosystem consists of two factors. The first thing is the supply chain itself, supply chain, the ecosystem of its supply chain. And second factor is the ecosystem of the data in use. So these are the two ecosystems we need to consider for this particular standard. Now coming to the last one, actually the end of PAA lifecycle requirements. This is relatively very small requirement, but the purpose is to ensure that careful consideration and planning during the design stage for the eventual deletion of PAA associated with the product reflects the privacy by design, and there we have only one requirement under that one. So with relevant third parties, again, the supply chain, the organization shall design and operate privacy controls to manage the risk at other product retirement and at the end of consumer product use. So this is at the very high level. So I didn't go deep into this each requirement because I mean it will take a lot of time to explain, because it requires an one full day session itself to explain each and every requirement here. So again, just to summarize, we have 5 requirements here. We have general requirements, then we have consumer communication requirements, then we have risk management requirements, then we have develop, deploy, and operate design privacy controls, and then we have end of PAA lifecycle requirements. And now the standard, what they try to do is actually they try to map these requirements of lifecycle processes and privacy protection goals. So I have just copied something from the standard itself. So these are the 3 processes typically standard. This particular standard I have identified as lifecycle processes. We have organizational policies. That is nothing but the activities that carried out by the organization to define and maintain policies related to privacy by design. That is one of the lifecycle processes. The second lifecycle process is related to product design and development. These are nothing but the activities carried out by the organization to design and develop consumer goods and services. And then the last lifecycle process is typically the product use. This is nothing but the activities carried out by the organization to manage the privacy when consumer goods or services are in use. And similarly, they have also identified the privacy protection goals. The first one is unlinkability. So like we have a confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information security. Here they have identified the properties for personal information here. So one is unlinkability. So it talks about the property that privacy relevant data cannot be linked across domains that are constituted by a common purpose and context. So this ensures that a PAA principal can make multiple uses of resources or services without others being able to link these uses together. Then we have transparency. This is another property which ensures that all privacy relevant data processing, including the legal, technical, and organizational setting, can be understood as documented or stated. Then we have intervenability, which talks about the property that ensures that PAA principals, controllers, PAA processors, and supervisory authorities can intervene in all privacy relevant data processing. So these are the 2 privacy the 3 privacy goals, and as well as we have 3 life cycle processes. And what this part 2 of this standard, what it does is it took each and every requirement and then try to see actually which life cycle process is applicable for that particular requirement. For example, we are discussing about general requirements 4.1. Under that 4.1, we have many sub requirements. So now assume that 4.1.1 is a requirement as per the standard one. Now, which life cycle process is applicable for that particular standard? So that information is available in our part 2. Similarly, which privacy protection goal is linked to that requirement, or by meeting that requirement, which protection goal is going to meet. So that is also clearly mapped in part 2. So now coming to the use cases here. So there are 3 use cases they have given. One is an online trading company, another one is a fitness company, and third one is, I think if I remember, it is a smart lock, which we have in the doors. So now I took this fitness company as an example. I mean, I'm again not going deep into this one. I'll just give you a glimpse of what is there in this one and how they try to interpret this particular requirement. So fitness company, it is something very interesting actually. It is a combined service that allows customers to practice physical activities in external place and track their health info on their mobile phone. Typically, I mean, we have this mobile phone which we have it, and whatever the exercise which we are doing in the fitness company actually, so or the gym, or sometimes even now actually even shoes also have the GPS connected, the trackers are there, and it will tell you actually how many steps you use that particular shoes like that actually. So that information, I mean, there are plenty of sources of information, and it's all connected to a mobile phone. This is at the very high level this fitness company is about, and their privacy protection goal, it is nothing but a combined service that allows customers to practice these physical activities in an external place and track their health info on their mobile phone. And what is this ecosystem and systems of interest? So I was explaining you the ecosystem. We have 2 types of ecosystem here. One is on the supply chain, and another one is the data in use. I mean, what data we have which were used, and what is the environment or infrastructure for that one, and then what is the supply chain we have in order to meet this requirement. So we have this ecosystem is nothing but the fitness center information system, that is the data in use, the smartphone application, and typically the smartphone application will be developed by somebody else. It may not be by the fitness company. So there is a supply chain involved here, and then smartwatch with sensors. This is also being typically being manufactured by somebody else, may not be by the fitness company. So we can see that ecosystem where they have a central information system, which is the data in use, and then they have the supply chain, which talks about the smartphone application and smart watch with sensors. And this is at the high level, this particular service description actually. I will just read out for your benefit. For example, a consumer goes to India Fitness Center to get a membership. He provides his contact information and address. In order to process payment, he enters his credit card. The fitness center asks the client if he wants to receive newsletters or become a member of the loyalty program. He declines. The fitness center proposes the use of a smart health application with an additional subscription cost. The application can receive information provided by various sensors used in the fitness center. The data is only collected in a protected zone of the smartphone and protected through a combination of password and biometric authentication. He accepts that one. And the consumer can then practice activities in the fitness center. It can then access collected health info. The health info is not accessible by the fitness company nor by any other organization. So now this is a service. It is not a product. This is a service for a particular user. Okay. Now there can be another situation where in this case the customer declines. But in the first case, another situation where the customer accepts it. So there can be another service for a different user. So there again the requirements differs here. The privacy requirements will vary from customer to customer in this case. So now at the very high level, what we need to do is, I mean, we need to identify what can be the different situations. So in this case, it can be some 2 or 3 situations. And then for each 2 or 3 situations, I mean, for all these customers who comes to this fitness center, they will either into the first bucket or enter into the second bucket or enter into the third bucket. Okay, now It is the responsibility of the fitness company to identify what are the different requirements here. I mean, which is applicable for the first set, which is applicable for the second set, and which is also applicable for the third set here. Okay. And when it comes to the risk assessment, the privacy risk assessment, they have to also involve their supply chain. Supply chain means the guys who are manufacturing this, those who are designing and developing this smartphone application, and the guys who are manufacturing this smartwatch with sensors. So they have to involve them also for this risk assessment in this particular phase. And now what is the PIA here? PIA is nothing but the PIA here in this particular situation can be the health data in the smartphone, the access data, the data on location and time, the client payment information, client name, address, email, and phone. So now the identification of ecosystem is very critical. So like I said, actually, typically the ecosystems are supply chain and data space or data in use. So if you are not able to identify these ecosystems clearly, then we will fail in doing this privacy assessment or even privacy risk here. So now, if you try to see what are the requirements, see now the other side, we have this part one, we have identified many requirements. Okay. Now, which requirements are applicable for this organization? So we can see that most of the general requirements under clause 4 may not be applicable for this fitness company, because they are not designing anything here. Actually, they are only designing a service here, and many of the product specific requirements may not be applicable for them. But such requirements will be applicable for the smartphone application development company or the smartwatch manufacturing company. It may be applicable for them, but not for the fitness company. So here we need to see actually, I mean, first of all, the roles, I mean, whether which role this particular OEM or service provider plays, whether based on the PIA they have, it's a data processor or it's a data controller. Once they are identified it's a PA processor or PA controller or both, then we need to see it actually, I mean, which requirements will be applicable for them based on the PA and based on the ecosystem they have and based on the different type of services they have. And for a product, typically this type of bucketing may not be a challenge for a product development company, because typically for a particular, they have to do it for a particular product. If they have 10 products, definitely they have to do the privacy risk assessment for all the 10 products. Then only they can claim the conformity to this particular standard. So now, again, I'm just repeating at the very high level, this particular standard is an umbrella standard, doesn't talks about any specific technologies, any specific methodologies here. It talks of, for example, privacy risk assessment, talks about actually for any product, you have to do the privacy risk assessment for that product. Now that product can be, it can be used for in an automotive sector, or it can be a product in a healthcare sector, like an scanner or X-ray device or a surgery device, or it can be a product in railways, or it can be a product in aerospace, or it can be a product in a manufacturing company, or it can be a product in a food and the beverages or a bottling plant. These products varies and product functionalities also varies. So the way we do the risk assessment for each product and how the product stores this information, that also varies. So that is not that easy. So that is the reason actually I think very smartly or cleverly they have clearly mentioned that they will not include any methodologies or any technologies here in the standard, but then it will be huge. And so that is the reason I expect we will have more use cases, more product specific or more industry specific privacy by design standards will come in the future. So that's why this particular on 31700, we named it as a series rather than a particular standard. So that's from my side. Any questions?
Rajeev, there are two questions by Mr. Govind on the chat window.
Okay.
You want me to read, or you can read yourself? I can help you.
Let me see.
Yeah, otherwise I can read for you. No issues. The first question is asking, this is the second requirement standard in the privacy management published by ISO. First one being ISO 27701, right? Correct. So he's asking, will this standard get enough reception as a third-party audit-based standard, in your opinion?
Yeah, see, the 27701 standard, it's a process-based standard, and this is a product-based standard. Okay, and privacy by design, it is becoming an requirement in most of our regulations. For example, now if you see GDPR or any other regulations, actually, privacy by design is a standard, and it clearly says that actually privacy, all the products should meet those requirements also. Now ISO have come out with this specific umbrella standard of privacy by design. So I don't expect any certifications, but these are the best practices we need to follow for that privacy by design. So it is not like an 27001 or a 27701 or a 9000 kind of standard. This one. This is a product specific standard.
Mr. Rajeev, but they have made it into a requirement standard. Is there any meaning in it? Is there any purpose?
Yeah, requirement for the product development. See,
Correct.
again, requirement. Yeah, requirement. Yes. All the requirement standards are not certifiable standard because this is a particular standard. They want to make it more simple. So that is the reason, even though they named it as a requirement standard, but in the standard, if you see, it is requirements and guidance. Both the things are there. And this is applicable for product. Okay, so I don't expect a certification here actually, because we cannot, using this particular standard, we cannot certify a product. We can only certify the product development methodologies. Again, that may not be that much relevant, or I don't think actually it will be suited to that product specific requirements.
Okay.
Rajeev.
Yes. Yeah.
This Alipu, is this a certifiable standard or not?
No, it is not a certifiable standard. Yeah, this is a requirement standard, but not a certifiable standard. I don't expect actually this will become a certifiable standard also.
Okay, maybe we don't have business.
Pardon?
We don't have a business on this.
No,
we don't have business.
It is different actually. Because I see it from a different angle, sir, here actually.
Okay.
Now, see, for whatever the products we have actually, for example, now we are working with I will give another example actually. We are working with automotive industry. Okay. And in the automotive industry, we have a cyber security management standard. Okay, it is not a 27701 standard.
You're talking about TISAX.
I know.
No, it is not TISAX actually. It is 21434. This is a product specific standard. Okay. Now, for all the cars manufactured from, or all the, especially the road vehicles manufactured from 2024, July should meet the requirements of 21434. So this is from the product angle. Okay, so the business is actually, rather than a process, the process compliance for a 27,000 compliance, nobody will force you to ensure the, to have a compliance. Okay. There is no such requirements. But when it comes to product, now you're selling your product in the market. Now the people will, your customers will ask actually, how can I trust this product? Do you have this thing? So there you need to say actually, okay, I am compliant to this requirement. So then show me the proof. So rather than a process requirement here, product requirements will have more value because it is money. It is the business of the organization. The process, when it comes to 27 or any other standard, it becomes a compliance requirement. So there people try to sometimes, they need to comply. I know actually many our certification guys, even I was also in a certification body. So people.
We both are there.
Yeah, correct. People object to it, but unfortunately, the people consider compliance, especially the standard compliance, as something as a last priority. But for them, product is important, because if that product doesn't sell in the market, then they are gone.
Okay.
So they are ready to invest to any level for their product.
Right. So now here for an industry like medical health services, we have ISO 27700. That is industry. Industry to be adopted is a certifiable standard.
27701
is like that?
Yeah, 27701 is a certifiable standard. Again, that particular standard doesn't talk anything about the product.
No. I'm talking about the ISO 27799.
Okay. 27799 standard, that is a health informatics standard. Again, that is also not a certifiable standard. That is only for...
It is certifiable. Rajeev, it is a certifiable standard for the medical industry organizations.
Correct. This is for the health
It's just like
informatics.
our ISO 27701.
Yeah, health
This is
informatics.
healthcare
I
informatics.
need to check that certifiable status, but
This is better.
yeah, that is a health informatics status. See, in this case,
Yes.
actually, we are talking about the two ecosystems here. Okay, one is the data in space, and another one is the supply chain. So 27799 talks only about the data in use or data space.
Hmm.
Okay, not on the other ecosystems.
Yeah. And see now what this is standard what you mentioned. Applied to a company, I recently came to know a company called Beachbody in America.
Okay.
They have an online system where people can register to avail fitness services. So this Beachbody, they appoint the trainers at locations. They recommend products, health products, protein products, everything. So once a person reached on this company, they pay a fee, and that part of fee will be paid to trainer. And when they sell a product, the part money goes to the original manufacturer.
Okay.
That kind of companies are there. So these companies are most prevalent in the Western countries. So now, as you mentioned somewhere, since GDPR is a regulation and their privacy design is a must. That's why now ISO releases this particular standard specifically for products and services related standard compliance part. So this is not certifiable right now, but in future I see that this may become a certifiable standard to meet the compliance requirement of GDPR sort of privacy laws.
Yeah, I believe it might become a certifiable standard in the future, but only when they have plenty of or sufficient privacy by design for each and every industry.
Right. Thank you.
Rajeev, Ramesh,
Yes.
see, following are my thoughts actually. In the healthcare, as you know, in the product development, okay, if especially today, if you're looking at it, if I'm obviously the product is going to be marketed in European Union region, obviously I am need to be taking care of my GDPR. The moment the GDPR, we talk about privacy by design, security by design, and default comes into picture, right? Then we have other standards like 80,000 iPhone 1 Part 2 for cyber security related. Then we have, if I'm going to launch it in US market, then I need to take care of HIPAA. If I'm going to get into, let's say, Brazil or Australia, we have different privacy principle, APP to whatnot. Now, this is already built in, correct? Product wise, I'm talking about, as you correctly mentioned, I'm getting the idea now. This is only for a product level, and it makes sense more and more makes sense to me that instead of looking at the full organizational level, better to go at the product level, correct? So that the product level requirement, as you correctly said, even within the product, that use cases are different, as your slide beautifully talked about, fitness company, right? Now, we have already so many built-in mechanisms, right? And further to this, again, privacy by design as a separate standard. I really don't know. Will it also be not become an overhead for the organizations also, or a product companies also, right? Second input for me is that when you said supply chain need to be involved in the risk assessment. Now, let's say we have a big problem today, right? When I'm hosting a product in, let's say, Azure. Now, what kind of risk assessment I can involve them in offering my services or goods on Azure platform or Amazon, for example, right? How will I get them?
See, that depends on the product and service, Ramesh, here. For example, we use Azure for probably for delivering a service.
Right.
Okay. And maybe, okay, we have SaaS and other things are there. Okay.
Right.
But this concept actually predominantly it came from actually from a hardware device. Okay. Now you have a for example, if you take the healthcare industry is in big danger actually, big risk because you have plenty of devices. Now all these devices are connected with IoT and other things, and it's even for surgery is also remotely done.
Absolutely.
Okay. The robotics and the robots, and we have all these devices are there, and now we don't know, what they have inside these tools. Okay, so this information only data may go into cloud for storage or something like that, but the other side actually the rest of the product life cycle is very critical here.
Yeah, what I'm trying to add here is that, Rajeev, absolutely I'm with you. That's
Yeah.
what, let's say, even when I'm trying to embed or integrate an OTS software, for example, right? We do a proper validation. What is the intended purpose and which is that particular version I am trying to take it. Then I'm also looking into fast disclosure statement in terms of any kind of license issue should not come in tomorrow. So there are mechanisms already we are building in. On top of it, one more we are talking about now, correct? Or over a period of time, all these things need to get integrated probably into one single framework to make the product companies also really look into or
Yeah.
optimizing.
See, I would like to believe it in a different way, Ramesh, here.
Sure.
Okay. Now, on side, actually, I mean, for all these requirements, actually, be it in cybersecurity, critical infrastructure requirement, or be it as a privacy requirement. Okay.
Yes.
Privacy by design, privacy by default, these things are mandatory for any product now. Okay. So that is, I mean, even GDPR also, we have this requirement. In India law, everywhere, actually, this is a requirement. Now, at the organization level, now, for example, now assume that you are manufacturing an valve, say, and you are manufacturing a smartwatch with the sensors, or you are developing a software. Okay. In both the cases, now you don't have any proper guidelines available to see actually what exactly this privacy by default or privacy by design. I mean, the regulation just talks about privacy by design, but I mean, the technology is changing. So what exactly we need to consider for privacy by design in while developing a software or while manufacturing a smartwatch here? You don't have any guideline. So what these guys have done is they have tried to come out with a generic guideline, which will help you to meet those requirements of privacy by design. So in that way, actually, if you meet these things or if you meet these requirements, then your privacy leakage or privacy compromises will be less. And that way, actually, I mean, it can save the organizations from the penalties. I mean, I would like to see it from that angle rather than a compliance perspective.
Got it. Very, very nice, actually. And last bullet from my side, when I look at the standard, they are referring almost 72 plus references, starting from 9001 to 73, our risk management guide to almost all the 27,001 related stuffs are referred. So it's a combination of, I think, many of the best practices being built in here.
You're right. You are right.
Great.
Any other questions we have in the chat, Ramesh?
1 minute. One question. 1 minute.
I think we have a question from Srikanth. The new AI chat GPT where users integrating in their application, will privacy by design applicable? Still, with the product is not fully developed. Yeah, I think the privacy by design, it is a requirement, but whether the standard will be applicable, that we need to see it. If not standard, at least some other alternative mechanism, we need to have it actually. But privacy by design, it's a requirement based on your geographical area.
Yeah. Rajeev, one more question you want to pick it up. Advocate, I think Ishan Goel is asking, what will happen to the data when the consumer leaves the fitness center?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So that is, I mean, maybe we need to add those things in the particular scenario and see actually.
I think this is also you covered, if I'm right, the standard covers, right?
Correct.
The PII continues even after that product. Absolutely.
So the life cycle of PIA and life cycle of product. So life cycle, we need at each life cycle of the product, we need to see the life cycle of PIA. So PIA. So in that case, I mean, automatically this also will get covered.
Right.
So there are things like data at rest, data at motion, etc. I think they also will have some meaning because we are talking about PBD.
Yes.
Excellent. In Rajeev, excellent session. Thank you very much, really.
Thank you.